The
We
first
rely on you for
time I told
childcare,
my
Mom. You can't
family
just leave
no,
us hanging like this.
I told you,
they
I am
looked at
done.
me
I
like
have my
had
own life to
committed a
live.
crime.
Your life? What about ours?
My daughter
we have
called
jobs.
me selfish. My son said I was becoming bitter with age. My daughter-in-law accused me of punishing innocent children. All
Assisted
because
living.
I refused to babysit again for free.
No,
But
this
what
can't
they
be
didn't
right.
know was that the night before, I had found a folder with my name on it inside my daughter's home. And inside that folder was proof that my family had not only been using me for childcare, they had been planning what to do with my house, my savings, and the rest of my life. If this story touches something in your heart, please, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what you would have done. I'd also love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. After Daniel died, the house became so quiet, I could hear the refrigerator humming from the living room. That was the first thing I noticed. Not the empty side of the bed, not the closet where his work jacket still hung in a neat row, not even the coffee mug he had used every morning for almost 47 years. It was the quiet. It settled over my little house in Columbus, Ohio, like dust on furniture no one had the heart to touch. Daniel had been the kind of man who filled a room without trying. He whistled when he fixed things. He talked to the tomato plants like they were stubborn children. He left his reading glasses in the strangest places and then blamed the house for hiding them. After he was gone, all those ordinary irritations became treasures. I would find a pencil behind the dryer or an old receipt in his jacket pocket and stand there holding it like it was a letter from heaven. I was 68 when I became a widow. People said I was still young enough to start a new chapter. But grief does not care how old you are. Grief has its own calendar. Some mornings, I woke up almost normal. Other mornings, I reached across the bed before remembering there was no one there. Still, I tried to keep my routines. Daniel had always said routines were little fences that kept sadness from running wild. So I got up at 6. I made 1 cup of coffee instead of 2. I opened the curtains in the kitchen even when there was no one sitting at the table to tell me the weather looked promising. I watered the white hydrangeas along the porch. I went to church on Sundays and sat in the same pew Daniel and I had shared for decades. After church, people hugged me too tightly and spoke too softly. They asked, "How are you holding up, Morgan?" with the kind of eyes that already expected tears. "I'm managing," I always said. And I was. At least, I thought I was. My days were not empty exactly, but they were thin. I had retired from the elementary school library 2 years before Daniel passed. I had imagined retirement as a soft season. Daniel and I were going to drive through New England in the fall visit, antique stores argue about where to stop for lunch, and maybe finally take that trip to Savannah we had postponed 3 times. Instead, I learned how to eat dinner alone. My neighbor Helen Parker tried to keep me from disappearing into myself. Helen was 71, sharp as a sewing needle, and never afraid to say what everyone else only thought. She would knock on my back door with banana bread or soup or gossip from church, then sit with me at the kitchen table like she had nowhere else to be. "You need people, Morgan," she told me one afternoon while I folded a load of towels just to keep my hands busy. "I have people," I said. Helen gave me that look of hers. "You have children who call when they need something, and grandchildren who adore you. That is not the same as people checking on your soul." I laughed because I did not want to cry. "My soul is doing laundry today." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I mean it. Don't let loneliness make you grateful for crumbs." At the time, I thought she was being dramatic. Then Laura called. Laura Whitman was my daughter, my firstborn, my little girl, who used to sleep with one hand wrapped around my finger. She was 39, then married to Brian with 2 children, Emma 8 and Noah 6. Laura had always been organized, the kind of woman who labeled pantry shelves and scheduled dentist appointments 6 months early. So, when she called me sounding breathless and close to tears, I sat up straight in my chair. "Mom, I hate to ask this," she said, which of course meant she was about to ask. "What is it, sweetheart? The daycare called?" Noah's classroom has some kind of plumbing issue and they're closing early. I have a presentation at 2 Bryans across town with a client and I don't know what to do. How early? Could I drop him off with you for just a few hours? I'll pick him up right after work. I promise. Just a few hours. Those words sounded harmless then. Sweet. Even. I remember looking around my kitchen at the clean counters, the silent hallway, the row of mugs no one used but me. The idea of Noah's little sneakers by the door, his voice asking for apple slices, his warm arms around my neck. It felt like someone had opened a window in a room I had forgotten was stuffy. Of course, I said, "Bring him over." Laura exhaled so hard I could hear the relief through the phone. "Mom, thank you. You're saving me." That phrase warmed me more than it should have. You're saving me. When you are grieving, being useful can feel almost like being loved. I did not understand that then. I only knew that for the first time in weeks, I had a reason to turn on the oven. I made peanut butter cookies, the soft kind Noah liked. I sliced apples and sprinkled cinnamon on them because Emma once said that made them fancy. I pulled the basket of children's books from the guest room closet, the same basket I had kept since my grandchildren were toddlers. For a few hours that afternoon, my house came alive again. Noah built a fort with couch cushions. He spilled apple juice on the rug. He asked me why Grandpa Daniel had to live in heaven and whether heaven had lawnmowers because Grandpa liked mowing the yard. I cried later after Laura picked him up, but while he was there, I smiled more than I had in a month. Laura hugged me at the door. "I don't know what we'd do without you." There it was again, that little spark, needed. A few days later, she asked if I could watch Emma after school because Brian had a late meeting. Then she asked if I could keep Noah one morning because he had a cough but no fever. Then Emma wanted to come over on Saturday to bake cookies, and Laura said, "Honestly, Mom, it would help us so much if Noah came too." I did not mind. I truly did not. At least, not at first. Then my son David called. David Kelly was 42, the kind of man who had inherited Daniel's broad shoulders, but not his patience. He worked in sales, talked fast, and always sounded like he was standing in front of an elevator he could not miss. His wife Amanda was polished and polite in public, but there was something in the way she spoke to me that often made me feel like I was being managed. They had 2 children, Sophie, 7 dramatic and bright-eyed, and Caleb 4, a sweet little boy who still dragged a stuffed dinosaur everywhere. "Mom," David said one Thursday evening, Amanda's sister canceled on us. "Any chance you could take Sophie and Caleb tomorrow for a couple hours? I had planned to meet Helen for lunch." But Caleb's little face came to mind. Sophie's too. And David sounded stressed. "What time?" I asked. "Only 10 to 2? Maybe 3 at the latest." Only. That word became a doorway I walked through again and again. The next day, Sophie painted watercolor rainbows at my kitchen table while Caleb lined up Daniel's old measuring tapes like train tracks. I made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. Sophie asked if she could call me the fun grandma, and my heart nearly burst. When David arrived, it was almost 4:30, not 3. He rushed in wearing his Bluetooth headset, kissed the top of my head, and said, "You're the best, Mom. Seriously, you're a lifesaver." There was that feeling again. That little drop of honey in the heart. A lifesaver. For a widow still trying to prove she had not become useless, those words were powerful. Dangerous, though I did not know it yet. Within a few weeks, my calendar began to change. Not officially. No one sat me down and asked if I wanted a schedule. It just happened in small pieces. Laura needed help on Mondays. David needed help every other Friday. Amanda asked if I could pick Sophie up from dance because it was on my side of town, though it was 25 minutes away. Brian asked once if he could drop Noah off before breakfast because he had an early call. I said yes to all of it because I loved my grandchildren. Because my children seemed overwhelmed. Because Daniel was gone and the house was quiet and being needed felt better than being alone. At night, after the children left, I would walk through the living room, picking up crayons, socks, toy cars, sticky cups, and little torn pieces of construction paper. The house looked messy, but it no longer looked dead. I told myself this was a blessing. Some women my age barely saw their grandchildren. Mine wanted to be with me. That was how I explained it to Helen when she raised an eyebrow at the booster seat now permanently strapped into the back of my car. "Looks like you're running a shuttle service," she said. I smiled. "They just need a little help right now." Helen studied me over the rim of her coffee cup. "And what do you need?" The question made me uncomfortable. "I need my family to be okay," I said. "No," she replied gently. "That is what they need." I asked what you need. I looked away towards the window where Daniel's hydrangeas were beginning to bloom. The honest answer was simple. I needed not to feel alone, but I did not say that. Instead, I folded a dish towel, smoothed it twice, and said, "I'm fine." Back then, I believed helping my family would keep us close. I believed love meant showing up before anyone had to beg. I believed that if I gave enough, they would see my heart and treasure it. I did not yet understand that some people do not treasure what is freely given. They simply begin to expect it, and expectation, when left unchecked, can turn love into labor so slowly that you do not notice the chains until they are already around your wrists. The first few weeks, I told myself it was temporary. That is what people like me do when something begins to feel wrong, but not wrong enough to confront. We soften it with words. We call it a season. We call it family helping family. We call it love. Laura would text on Sunday nights. "Mom, could you get Noah from school tomorrow?" Just this once. Then Monday became every Monday. David would call while I was rinsing dinner dishes. "Mom, Amanda's stuck with a client. Can Sophie stay with you after dance?" Then dance night became my responsibility too. No one ever sat me down and asked, "Would this work for you?" No one said, "Mom, you've been doing so much. Are you tired?" The arrangement simply grew around me like ivy climbing a wall. At first, it looked pretty. Then one day, I realized it was covering every window. My refrigerator changed before I did. The top shelf filled with yogurt tubes, juice boxes, string cheese, baby carrots, applesauce cups, and the little dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets Caleb loved. My pantry, once neat and modest, became a snack station. Goldfish crackers, granola bars, fruit snacks, macaroni and cheese, peanut butter, graham crackers. I remember standing in the grocery store one Tuesday morning, holding 2 boxes of cereal I did not eat, and thinking I should ask Laura if she wants to send some money for this. Then I immediately felt ashamed. What kind of grandmother counted cereal? So I put the boxes in my cart. That was how it started. Not with one big demand, but with 100 small silences from me. On Mondays, I picked Noah up from school because Laura said traffic made it impossible for her to get there on time. On Wednesdays, I drove Sophie to dance class because Amanda said the studio was closer to me than to her office, though it still took me 25 minutes each way. On Fridays, Caleb came over because David said preschool half-days were a logistical nightmare. And weekends, those became the real problem. At first, Laura would ask if Emma and Noah could come over Saturday morning so she and Brian could run errands. Then David would hear about it and say, "Since you already have 2 kids, would 2 more really make a difference?" I should have said, yes, it makes a difference. 4 children make a difference. 4 lunch plates. 4 different moods. 4 sets of shoes left in 4 different corners. 4 little voices calling grandma at once. 4 bodies needing snacks, help in the bathroom, a clean shirt. a bandage, a story, a hug, a referee, a witness. But every time I almost said it was too much, someone added guilt before I could form the words. "They love being with you," Laura would say. "You're so good with them," Amanda would add. "Mom, it's not like you have a boss waiting on you," David said once, laughing, as if that made it harmless. That sentence stayed with me. It's not like you have a boss waiting on you. As if retirement meant my hours had no value. As if Daniel dying had turned my life into a community resource. As if my calendar, my body, my rest, my quiet mornings, my grief, my friendships, my doctor appointments, my church lunches, my book club, all of it was just empty space, waiting for my children to fill. Still, I smiled. I opened the door. I said, "Come in, sweetheart," and took backpacks from little shoulders. I do not want you to think I resented my grandchildren. I did not. Not then. Not ever. Emma was thoughtful and gentle, always noticing when I looked tired. She liked to sit beside me while I folded towels, asking questions about what her mother was like as a girl. Noah had a laugh that could brighten the darkest room. Sophie was dramatic in the way only a 7-year-old can be, performing little songs in my living room with a wooden spoon as a microphone. Caleb was still small enough to climb into my lap and press his warm cheek against my chest. I loved them with my whole heart. That was exactly why it became so difficult to admit I was being used. Because the love was real. But the respect was disappearing. One Friday, David texted me at 7:12 in the morning. "Dropping Caleb off in 20. Big day at work." "Thanks, Mom." I stared at the screen in my robe, my coffee still untouched on the counter. I had planned to go to the library that morning. They were having a used book sale, and Helen had promised to meet me there. It was a silly little thing, maybe, but I had been looking forward to it all week. I typed, "I have plans today." Then I deleted it. I typed, "Could Amanda stay with him?" Deleted that too. Finally, I sent, "Okay." 20 minutes later, David's SUV pulled into the driveway. He did not come inside. He unbuckled Caleb, handed him his dinosaur backpack, kissed the air near my cheek and said, "You're a lifesaver. I owe you." He did not owe me, of course. Not in any way that ever came due. Caleb stayed until after 5. That same afternoon, Laura called and asked if I could pick up Emma and Noah because she was running behind. By 6 o'clock, I had 3 children at the kitchen table eating spaghetti, one child crying because the sauce had green things in it, another needing help with math homework, and my phone buzzing with a message from Helen. "Missed you today. Everything okay?" I looked at that message for a long time. Then I placed the phone face down. Because answering honestly would have required me to admit something I was not ready to admit. No, everything was not okay. My days became a blur of school pickup lines, booster seats, lunchboxes, sticky fingerprints, cartoons, homework folders, wet mittens, runny noses, and texts that began with, "Could you just?" or "Any chance?" or "We're desperate." But desperate people, I later learned, do not book nail appointments during emergencies. They do not go golfing while grandma handles a fever. They do not post smiling brunch photos while claiming they are buried under work. At the time, I made excuses for all of it. Young families are under pressure. Life is expensive. They trust me. The children need stability. Daniel would want me to help. That last one was the sharpest hook. Whenever I felt tired, I imagined Daniel watching me from somewhere beyond this world. I imagined him proud of me for keeping the family together. He had been a family man through and through. He fixed everyone's cars, showed up for every school play, shoveled neighbors' driveways without being asked. Giving was part of who he was. But Daniel had also known how to say no. I had forgotten that part. One evening, after all 4 grandchildren had finally been picked up, I stood in the hallway looking at the mess they had left behind. Crayons under the coffee table, a crushed cracker in the rug, Caleb's sock on the stairs, a purple hair bow on Daniel's old recliner. My back ached. My head throbbed. The kitchen smelled like macaroni and dish soap. I had not eaten dinner. Then my phone buzzed. It was Amanda. Thanks again. Same time next Friday. Not are you free? Not would that be okay? Same time next Friday, I felt something small shift inside me. Not anger exactly. Not yet. More like a quiet knock from a room I had locked years ago. Morgan, are you still in there? I stared at the message until the screen went dark. Then I set the phone down without answering. For 10 whole minutes, I let the silence stand. It frightened me how rebellious that felt. The next morning, I answered anyway. Sure, I typed. See you Friday. And just like that, the ivy climbed higher. The first time Brian honked from the driveway instead of coming to the door, I told myself not to take it personally. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon, the kind of gray Ohio day that made my knees ache before I even got out of bed. I had watched Emma and Noah since lunch because Laura had a tight schedule, though she never explained what that meant. By 5 o'clock, Noah had spilled chocolate milk on the kitchen rug, Emma had cried over a school project, and I had reheated the same cup of tea 3 times without drinking it. When Brian pulled up, I expected him to come inside at least long enough to say hello. Instead, he honked twice. Noah looked up from the floor where he was tying his shoes. "Daddy's here," he said. I stood by the front window and watched Brian sit in his SUV with one hand on the steering wheel phone glowing against his face. He did not look toward the house. He did not wave. He did not smile. Emma grabbed her backpack. Noah ran out after her, and I stood in the doorway calling, "Careful, sweetheart. The steps are wet." Brian rolled down the passenger window just enough to say, "Thanks, Morgan," then backed out before Noah had even clicked his seatbelt. I closed the door slowly. "Thanks, Morgan. Not Mom. Not Grandma. Not, do you need help cleaning up? Not sorry we're late. Just a quick word tossed through a cracked window like spare change." I stood in the hallway longer than I needed to. There was a muddy footprint on the rug, a half-eaten granola bar on the entry table, Emma's damp craft paper curling on the kitchen counter. The house was loud with evidence that I had spent my whole day giving, but suddenly it felt empty of gratitude. That became the pattern. Laura would arrive late and distracted, talking into one earbud, mouthing sorry without actually saying it. Amanda would sweep in wearing perfume and a tight smile, gathering Sophie and Caleb as if my house were a pickup counter. David often did not come in at all. He texted from the driveway. "Send them out." At first, I answered cheerfully, "Coming." Then, after a while, I stopped adding exclamation points. The lateness became normal too. If Laura said 5:30, she meant 6:15. If David said 2, he meant after 4. If Amanda said just a quick appointment, it could mean anything from a dental cleaning to a shopping trip at Easton Town Center. No one asked whether those extra hours mattered to me, and I trained them not to ask by pretending they did not. One afternoon, Amanda dropped Caleb off with flushed cheeks and glassy eyes. "He's just a little tired," she said, avoiding my eyes as she set his dinosaur backpack on the bench. I placed my hand on Caleb's forehead. Heat pulsed under my palm. "Amanda, he feels warm." She was already reaching for the door. "He didn't have a fever this morning." "Did you take his temperature?" "He was fine, Morgan. He just needs a quiet day." But his bag held no medicine, no thermometer, no extra clothes, not even the blanket he liked when he was sick. By noon, Caleb was curled on my couch, sweating through his shirt, whimpering for his mother. I called Amanda twice. No answer. I called David. Straight to voicemail. I gave Caleb water found children's fever reducer left from an earlier visit and sat beside him, stroking his hair until he slept. My own lunch sat untouched on the counter. When Amanda finally picked him up at nearly 6, she frowned when she saw him bundled in one of Daniel's old flannel shirts. "Oh," she said. "He really does look sick." I stared at her, waiting for something. An apology, a thank you, a flicker of concern for the woman who had cared for her feverish child all day. Instead, she said, "Well, at least he was with you, and not some stranger." As though that settled it, as though my love erased her responsibility. A week later, I told Laura I had an eye appointment on Tuesday morning and would not be able to take Noah. There was a pause on the phone. "Can't you reschedule?" I looked at the little appointment card stuck to my refrigerator with a magnet from Niagara Falls. I had already rescheduled once. "Laura, my vision has been blurry. The doctor wanted to check it. I know, Mom, but Tuesday is a nightmare for me. Brian has a client breakfast, and I have back-to-back calls. It's not like it's urgent, right?" The word urgent sat between us like a stone. Was my eyesight urgent only if I could no longer drive her children? Was my health important only when it interfered with my usefulness? I wanted to say that. I wanted to say, I am not a spare tire you pull out when your life gets inconvenient. Instead, I heard myself sigh. "I'll call and see what they can do." Laura's relief came instantly. "Thank you. I knew you'd understand." That was another phrase I began to hate. I knew you'd understand. It meant I knew you would give in. The appointment moved to the following month. I did not tell Helen. Somehow disappointing my children felt easier than admitting to my friend that I had disappointed myself. But Helen noticed everything. She came over one Friday morning with a blueberry loaf wrapped in foil and found me packing 4 small lunches at the kitchen counter. "Field trip?" she asked. "No, just lunch for the kids." "All 4?" I smiled without looking up. "They like different things." Helen leaned against the counter. "Morgan, you're cutting grapes into quarters for children who have parents." I laughed, but she did not. "Are they asking you?" she said, "or are they assigning you?" The knife paused in my hand. "What kind of question is that? A necessary one." "They're busy," I said. "Young families are under pressure." Helen's face softened, but her voice did not. "Being busy does not give them permission to erase you." The word erase made my chest tighten. "I'm not being erased." "No." She nodded toward the calendar on my refrigerator. I turned and looked at it. Once that calendar had held my life. Church lunch, book club, hair appointment, Helen coffee, cemetery visit, library sale, doctor. Now it was covered in children's names. Emma pickup, Noah early dismissal. Sophie dance, Caleb all day. Kids overnight, ask Laura. David meeting, Amanda appointment. My handwriting filled every square, but somehow none of it belonged to me. I swallowed. "They need help." Helen stepped closer. "And what happens when you need help?" I did not answer, because the truth was, I already knew. When I needed help, I explained why I did not really need it. When I felt tired, I called it aging. When I felt hurt, I called it sensitivity. When they came late, I said traffic. When they forgot to thank me, I said stress. When they treated my time as worthless, I told myself grandmothers were supposed to be generous. That is how disrespect survives in families, not always through shouting, sometimes through excuses made by the very person being wounded. The deepest cut came from Laura, though I do not think she even realized she made it. I had been invited to lunch with 2 women from church, both widows, both kind. It was the first invitation in months that had nothing to do with children. I had chosen a blue blouse Daniel used to like and even put on lipstick. Then Laura called. "Mom, I need you to get Noah." The sitter fell through. "I can't today, sweetheart. I have lunch plans." There was a silence, then a small laugh. "Lunch plans?" The way she said it made me feel foolish. "Yes," I said quietly. "Mom, lunch can wait. I have an actual meeting. Actual. As if my life was imaginary." I gripped the phone tighter. "Laura." Then she said it. "It's not like you have a real job anymore." I stared at myself in the hallway mirror. Blue blouse, lipstick, silver hair pinned neatly back. A woman trying to remember she was still allowed to exist. Something inside me folded. "I'll get him," I whispered. After I hung up, I stood there for a long time. Then I went to the bathroom, wiped off the lipstick changed into an old sweater, and called the women from church to say I was sorry. That afternoon, while Noah watched cartoons, I washed a cup in the sink and cried so silently even I barely heard it. But Helen heard enough when she came by later. She found me with red eyes and wet hands. "Oh, Morgan," she said. I tried to smile. "It's nothing." Helen took the cup from me and set it down. "No," she said. "That is exactly what they're teaching you to believe." And for the first time, I did not defend them right away. The body tells the truth long before the heart is brave enough to. Mine began whispering first. A dull ache in my lower back when I bent to pick up Caleb's toy dinosaurs. A stiffness in my fingers after cutting fruit buttoning coats, tying shoes, wiping counters, folding tiny shirts that did not belong to my laundry basket. A heaviness behind my eyes at 4 in the afternoon when I still had homework to supervise, dinner to make, and parents to wait for. I blamed age. That was easy. At 68, people expect you to hurt a little. They expect you to move slower, sleep lighter, forget why you walked into a room. So when my knees throbbed after carrying groceries full of food for children who did not live with me, I told myself it was normal. When I started waking at 4:30 in the morning because I was worried about the next day's schedule, I called it being responsible. When my hands trembled while pouring orange juice into plastic cups, I tucked them behind my back until the shaking stopped. I was becoming very skilled at hiding what my family did not want to see. The mornings became the hardest. By then, Laura had stopped asking if I could help and had started informing me when the children would arrive. David did the same. Some days, I woke to 3 or 4 messages already waiting on my phone. "Noah has early dismissal today. Can you grab him? Caleb's preschool is closed for teacher training. Dropping him at 9. Sophie needs to be at dance by 4:15. Her shoes are in the pink bag. Emma has a science project due tomorrow. Can you help her finish it?" Every message looked small by itself. Together, they formed a wall. I began setting my alarm earlier, not because I wanted to, but because I needed time to prepare. I made oatmeal. I packed snacks. I checked the weather to know whether the children needed coats. I kept extra socks in the hallway basket, children's Tylenol in the cabinet, crayons in a drawer, and frozen chicken nuggets in the freezer. My home no longer felt like my home. It felt like a place I worked. Only no one called it work because no one was paying me. One Wednesday morning, Emma noticed my hand shaking. She was sitting at the kitchen table with a worksheet in front of her, swinging her feet above the floor, while I stirred oatmeal on the stove. Caleb was still half asleep on the couch, Sophie was looking for a missing hair clip, and Noah was building a tower out of cereal boxes. "Grandma," Emma said. "Yes, sweetheart. Why is your hand doing that?" I looked down. The spoon was trembling against the side of the pot, making a faint tapping sound. I tightened my grip. "Oh," I said lightly. "I guess I'm just hungry. You should eat breakfast too." The gentleness in her voice nearly undid me. An 8-year-old child saw what 4 adults refused to notice. "I will," I promised. But I did not. There was always something else first. Someone needed milk. Someone could not find a shoe. Someone did not like raisins, Someone had to use the bathroom right after I had finally sat down. By the time the children were settled, the oatmeal had cooled and my stomach had folded in on itself. That same week, I was supposed to see my cardiologist. It was only a follow-up, but it mattered. I had been having small spells of dizziness, little waves that made the kitchen tilt for a second before righting itself again. Daniel had always been strict about doctor appointments. He used to say, "Morgan, the house can wait. Your heart cannot." I had the appointment card on the refrigerator. Thursday, 10:30 a.m. I had planned carefully. No children that morning, at least, according to the schedule I had pieced together from everyone else's needs. Then Laura called at 8:15. "Mom, I am so sorry," she began. My chest sank before she even finished. "Noah says his stomach hurts and the school won't let him stay. I have a client presentation in less than an hour. Brian is already downtown." I closed my eyes. "Laura, I have my heart appointment this morning." There was a pause, but it was not the pause of someone concerned. It was the pause of someone calculating. "Can't you move it?" "I've waited 6 weeks for this." "I know, Mom, I know, but I really don't have anyone else." There it was again. The phrase that turned my spine to water. I really don't have anyone else. It made me feel cruel for wanting to take care of myself. It made my doctor's appointment sound selfish compared to a sick child. It made me forget that Noah had 2 parents, and I was not the only adult in the world with a driver's license. I called the cardiologist and rescheduled. The receptionist sounded tired when she said the next available appointment was 5 weeks away. "That's fine," I told her, but it was not fine. Noah arrived pale but cheerful enough to ask for cartoons and toast. Laura kissed the top of his head, thanked me quickly, and left before I could say anything else. I spent the morning checking his temperature, folding laundry, and touching my own chest every time my heart fluttered. That night, when Laura picked him up, she said, "You're such a blessing, Mom." I wanted those words to comfort me. Instead, they made me feel used. A few days later, the whisper became a warning. I had all 4 grandchildren that afternoon. Laura had dropped Emma and Noah off after school because she had a late meeting. David brought Sophie and Caleb because Amanda had something she couldn't cancel. No one asked if I could handle it. They simply overlapped their needs and expected me to stretch wide enough to cover them. By 5 o'clock, the house was chaos. Noah had tracked mud through the back hallway. Sophie was upset because Emma did not want to play school. Caleb had spilled applesauce down his shirt and was crying because it was cold. Emma was trying to help me, sweet child that she was, but even her help felt like another thing I had to manage. I put a pot of pasta on the stove because it was the easiest dinner I could make for 4 children with 4 opinions. The steam rose into my face. I reached for the cabinet to get plates, and suddenly the room tipped. Not spun, tipped. The counter slid away from me. The floor seemed to soften under my feet. I grabbed the edge of the sink with both hands. Grandma Emma's voice came from far away. "I'm all right," I said, though I was not sure I was. My ears rang. My heart thudded hard, then strangely light. For one terrifying second, I thought of Daniel, not as a memory, but as if he were standing in the doorway waiting for me. Then a knock sounded at the back door. Helen. She stepped inside, carrying a stack of mail that had been delivered to her by mistake. One look at me, and her face changed. "Morgan." "I'm fine," I whispered. "No, you are not." She moved quickly for a woman who complained about her hip every winter. She turned off the stove, guided me to a chair, and told Emma to bring a glass of water. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were furious. The children went quiet. Even Caleb stopped crying. Helen pressed her fingers to my wrist, then touched the back of my hand. When did you last eat? I had coffee. That is not food. I was busy. With children who have parents, she said sharply. I looked away. Helen knelt beside my chair, lowering her voice so the children would not hear. Morgan, listen to me. You are not helping anymore. You are disappearing. The words landed harder than any accusation could have. Disappearing. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say she was exaggerating, that families help each other, that I loved my grandchildren, that Laura and David were doing their best. But my body sat there trembling in that chair, betraying every excuse. That night, after the children were finally picked up late, after the pasta had clumped in the pot and the kitchen floor had been wiped twice, I went into Daniel's old desk. I had not opened the bottom drawer in months. Inside was one of his notebooks, brown leather, the kind he used for measurements and repair lists. The first few pages still held his handwriting. Garage shelf brackets. Replace porch light. Morgan likes the blue paint. I pressed my fingers to those words until my vision blurred. Then I turned to a blank page. At the top, I wrote the date. Under it, I wrote, Emma and Noah arrived at 3:20. Laura said pick up at 5:30, picked up at 6:45. Sophie and Caleb arrived at 3:40. David said Amanda would come by 5 o'clock, picked up at 7:10. Dinner, pasta, fruit milk. Paid by me. Dizzy spell at stove. Helen witnessed. I sat there staring at the page. It looked so plain, so small. No drama, no anger, just facts. But facts have a weight that excuses do not. So, I kept writing. I wrote down the missed heart appointment, the groceries, the gas, the late pickups, the times I canceled my own plans, the days I was given sick children without warning, the things they said that made me feel smaller. I did not begin that journal because I wanted revenge. I began it because I needed proof that I was not imagining my own exhaustion. And somewhere deep inside me, beneath the guilt and the fear and the grandmotherly love everyone had learned to use against me, a quiet truth began to rise. If I had to write it down to convince myself it was real, then something was terribly wrong. Noah's birthday party was supposed to be a happy day. That is what I kept telling myself as I stood in Laura's backyard, with frosting on my sleeve, a roll of paper towels under one arm, and a plastic trash bag in my hand. The sun was bright, the grass had been freshly cut, and blue balloons bounced along the fence whenever a breeze came through. Children ran across the yard, wearing paper superhero masks, shrieking with the kind of joy that should have made every tired bone in my body feel lighter. Instead, I felt like staff. I had arrived 2 hours early because Laura said she was completely overwhelmed. When I got there, she was upstairs curling her hair, while Brian was in the garage arranging coolers of drinks. Amanda was setting up a little drink station for the adults, and David was scrolling on his phone near the patio door. The cupcakes had not been frosted. The gift bags were still empty. The folding chairs were stacked against the fence. The tablecloths were wrinkled in their packages. And the children, already dressed for the party, were running wild through the house. Laura kissed my cheek quickly and said, "Mom, thank God you're here." That sentence used to warm me. By then it had begun to sound like a warning. I set my purse down and went to work. I frosted 24 cupcakes with blue and yellow icing. I filled gift bags with stickers, Bubbles candy, and little plastic cars. I taped streamers to the fence. I sliced watermelon. I wiped down patio chairs. I found candles. I helped Emma change after she spilled lemonade on her dress. I tied Sophie's hair back because Amanda said she did not want it messy in pictures. I kept Caleb from putting a handful of gummy bears into the dog's water bowl. Every few minutes, someone called my name. "Mom, where are the napkins? Morgan, can you watch the grill for 1 second? Grandma Noah took my mask. Mom, could you just keep the little ones away from the cake table? Could you just?" Those 3 words had become the theme song of my life. By the time guests began arriving, I had already been working for nearly 2 hours. My back hurt, and my feet throbbed in the shoes I had chosen, because they looked nice, not because they were made for chasing children across a yard. I had brought Noah a wrapped present, a dinosaur encyclopedia he had pointed out at the bookstore weeks earlier, but I had not even had time to place it on the gift table. I kept telling myself to be grateful. Look at the children, I thought. Look at their happy faces. This is what matters. Then I heard Brian laugh. I was crouched near the patio, wiping fruit punch from the concrete where one of the kids had knocked over a cup. A group of adults stood near the cooler, their backs half turned to me. Brian was holding a bottle of beer, smiling in that relaxed way people smile when they feel clever. "I'm telling you," he said, "we hit the jackpot with free daycare." The adults laughed. My hand froze around the wad of paper towels. Amanda chimed in light and playful. "Free daycare with cookies and bedtime stories? You can't beat that." More laughter. I stayed crouched there close enough to hear every word low enough that no one seemed to remember I was a person with ears. Brian said, "Honestly, if we had to pay for all the help Morgan gives, we'd be broke," someone asked. "So she watches all of them." "Oh, all the time," Amanda said. "She says yes to everything. The kids love it." Laura gave a small laugh. "I don't know what we'd do without her." I looked over at my daughter. She was smiling. Not cruelly, not exactly. But she did not correct them. She did not say, "My mother does so much, and we're grateful." She did not say, "We try not to take advantage." She did not even glance toward me with embarrassment. She just smiled, as if I were a family convenience everyone was lucky to have discovered. I stood up slowly, my knees protesting. The wet paper towels dripped red punch onto the grass. For a moment, I thought someone would notice my face. Someone would realize I had heard. But the conversation moved on, as if nothing sharp had been said. Amanda was the one who took it further. "You know how much daycare costs now," she said. "Between Caleb, Sophie, and the after-school programs, Morgan probably saves us at least $20,000 a year. Maybe more. 20,000. The number struck me harder than the joke. Not because I wanted the money. I had never asked for money. I had never even let myself think of it in those terms. But they had. They had counted it. While I stood in grocery aisles wondering whether it was wrong to notice the cost of cereal, they had already calculated what my unpaid labor was worth. While I paid for extra milk, extra snacks, extra gas, and extra medicine, they had been putting numbers on my time and laughing about it at a birthday party. I walked to the kitchen with the trash bag, though it was not full. I needed somewhere to put my face where no one could see it. The kitchen was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of children shouting outside. I placed both hands on the counter and tried to breathe. Then Emma came in. She was wearing a paper superhero cape, slightly crooked, her cheeks pink from running. "Grandma," she said. "Are you okay?" I turned quickly and smiled. "Of course, sweetheart. Just cleaning up." She came closer and leaned against the counter beside me. "Mommy said you saved lots of money." My stomach tightened. She said that Emma nodded, innocent as sunlight. "She told Daddy that daycare money helped pay for the beach trip. Is that why you watch us? So we can go to the beach?" The room seemed to grow very still. The beach trip. 3 months earlier, Laura and Brian had taken the children to Hilton Head for a week. Laura had posted pictures of rented bikes, seafood dinners, matching swimsuits, and a house with a view of the water. She had told me they really needed a break and that Brian had found a deal. That same month, I had watched Noah twice when he had a cough. I had picked Emma up from school almost every day. I had bought new booster seat covers because one had torn. I had canceled 2 lunches, 1 haircut, and a church volunteer meeting. And all the while, money that might have gone to childcare had gone toward the beach. I looked at Emma, and my anger dissolved into heartbreak. She was just a child, repeating adult words too young to understand the knife she had placed in my hand. "No, honey," I said softly. "I watch you because I love you." She smiled, satisfied, and ran back outside. I remained in the kitchen because both things were true. I watched them because I loved them, and my family had learned to turn that love into savings. When I returned to the yard, the party looked different. The balloons were still bright. The children still laughed. Noah still beamed when everyone sang happy birthday, but I felt as if a pane of glass had lowered between me and everyone else. I watched Laura take pictures of the cake I had decorated. I watched Brian accept compliments on the party I had helped set up. I watched Amanda sip lemonade while Caleb tugged on my skirt asking for another cupcake. No one saw the ledger forming in my mind. The gallons of gas, the groceries, the medicine, the missed appointments, the lost sleep, the hours, the dignity. That evening after the guests left, I stayed to help clean because no one told me not to. I collected plates, folded chairs, wrapped leftovers, and rinsed frosting from serving trays. Laura hugged me at the end and said, "Mom, you are amazing today." Amazing. That was the word people used when they benefited from your exhaustion. When I finally got home, the sun had gone down. My house was dark and quiet, but not peaceful. My feet hurt so badly I took off my shoes at the door and walked barefoot to Daniel's desk. I opened the brown leather notebook. For a long time, I sat with the pen in my hand. Then I wrote, "Noah's birthday party. Arrived 2 hours early. Set up, watched children, cleaned afterward. Heard Brian call me free daycare. Amanda said I save them at least $20,000 a year. Emma said daycare money helped pay for beach trip." I stopped there. My hand trembled, but not from weakness this time. From the terrible clarity of finally seeing what had been happening in plain sight. At the bottom of the page, I wrote one more sentence. They know exactly what they are taking. Our 47th wedding anniversary arrived on a Tuesday. I woke before the alarm, the way I always did on important days. For a moment, in that soft gray space between sleep and memory, I almost expected to hear Daniel moving around in the bathroom, humming off key while he brushed his teeth. He used to forget anniversaries until the week before then, panic and overcompensate with flowers, dinner reservations, and handwritten cards that always made me cry. But the house was still. Only the furnace clicked in the hallway and the wind brushed against the windows. I lay there with my hand on the empty side of the bed and whispered, "Happy anniversary, sweetheart." The words broke something open in me. I had planned the day carefully. No babysitting, no school pickups, no dance class, no just a couple hours. I had marked it on the calendar in blue ink 3 weeks earlier. Cemetery, Daniel, 11 a.m. That was all I wanted. I bought white roses from the grocery store because Daniel used to plant white flowers wherever we lived. They glow in the dark, he would say, as if flowers had secrets. I wrote him a letter on my best stationery, the kind with tiny blue flowers along the edge. I told him about the grandchildren, about Helen, about the hydrangeas, about how much I missed the sound of him in the garage. I did not write about how tired I was. Somehow, even in a letter to my dead husband, I still felt ashamed of admitting I was being worn down. I showered, dressed in a soft gray sweater Daniel had always liked, and pinned my hair neatly. Then I placed the roses on the kitchen table beside the letter. For the first time in weeks, the morning belonged to me and to the man I had loved most of my life. At 8:43, my phone rang. Laura. I looked at the screen and my stomach tightened. I almost did not answer. Then the guilt rose up, familiar and automatic. What if something had happened? What if one of the children was sick? What if she truly needed me? Good morning, sweetheart. Then the guilt rose up, familiar and automatic. What if something had happened? What if one of the children was sick? What if she truly needed me? "Good morning, sweetheart," I said. "Mom, I am so sorry," Laura began. That sentence had become a door I dreaded walking through. "What's wrong?" "I have an emergency meeting. Completely last minute. Brian's already out near Dayton, and I have no one for Noah after school. Could you please pick him up and keep him until dinner?" I closed my eyes. "Laura," I said carefully, "today is my anniversary with your father." There was a pause, a small one. Then she sighed. "I know, Mom." I waited for her to say she was sorry. I waited for her to say she had forgotten. I waited for even one sentence that honored the weight of the day. Instead, she said, "But Dad would want you to help your family." I gripped the edge of the counter. Those words did not sound like comfort. They sounded like theft. Daniel's name, my grief, our marriage, the sacred little space I had carved out for him. She had taken all of it and used it to push me toward yes. I looked at the roses on the table. "I was planning to go to the cemetery," I said. "You can go another day, can't you? Another day." As if grief were a dentist appointment. Before I could answer, another call buzzed through. "David." My heart sank lower. "Laura, I need to call you back, but I did not even have time." David's text appeared while I was still holding the phone. "Since you'll already have Emma and Noah today, can we bring Sophie and Caleb too?" Amanda's schedule blew up. I stared at the words. "Since you'll already have." Not "are you available?" Not "I know today is hard." Just a logistical assumption as clean and cold as a line on a spreadsheet. Laura was still talking. "Mom, are you there? I haven't agreed to take Emma," I said. "You only mentioned Noah." "Oh," she said, distracted. "Emma has art club, but yes, she'll need pickup too." My breath came shallow. "I cannot do this today, Laura." The silence that followed was different. Not concerned, not sad, offended. "Mom, it's one day." My eyes filled with tears. "That's exactly what I'm saying." She did not understand. Or maybe she did, and it did not matter. Within minutes, Amanda called. I let it go to voicemail. Then David called. Then Laura again. The messages came one after another. "Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Morgan, the kids need their grandmother. I get that you're sad, but we're all sad about Dad. Please don't be dramatic today." Dramatic. That word tipped me. For a few wild seconds, I wanted to throw the phone across the kitchen. I wanted to call Laura and ask her if she remembered standing between me and Daniel in our old church, holding both our hands when she was 6 years old. I wanted to ask David if he remembered his father teaching him to ride a bike in the street outside this house. I wanted to ask how they could say they missed him while using his memory to erase mine. Instead, I stood there, frozen, while the phone rang again. And then I did what I had always done. I said yes, not because I wanted to, not because it was right, not because I had the strength, because I was afraid. Afraid they would call me selfish. Afraid they would keep the children from me. Afraid Daniel, wherever he was, would be disappointed that I had failed to hold the family together. By noon, the roses still sat on the table. By 3, Emma and Noah were in my living room. By 4, David dropped off Sophie and Caleb with a quick, "You're a lifesaver, Mom," and did not notice my red eyes. The afternoon passed in fragments. Noah wanted a snack. Sophie could not find her dance shoes. Caleb cried because his dinosaur had a lonely face. Emma asked why I had flowers on the table. "They're for Grandpa," I told her. She touched one petal with careful fingers. "Are you taking them to him?" I swallowed. "I was going to." She looked at me the way only a child can look directly into the place adults pretend is hidden. "Then why aren't you?" I could not answer, so I made grilled cheese. At 5:30, when the children were watching cartoons, I carried the laundry basket down the hall, just to have somewhere to go. I stepped into the laundry room, shut the door halfway, and pressed Daniel's letter against my chest. Then I cried, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly with one hand over my mouth, because even in my own house on my own anniversary, I was afraid of disturbing someone. I cried for Daniel. I cried for the woman I had been when he was alive. I cried because my children had learned that my pain could be postponed whenever their convenience required it. When Laura finally arrived after 7, she seemed relaxed. Too relaxed. How was everything, she asked, gathering backpacks. I looked at her face, searching for signs of an emergency meeting. Stress, exhaustion, urgency. There were none. Her hair was freshly styled. Her nails were glossy pale pink. "I thought you had a meeting?" I said. She hesitated for half a second. "I did. Sort of. It got moved. That night, after everyone left, I saw the truth by accident. I opened Facebook because loneliness makes fools of us." Laura's post was near the top, a smiling photo of her with 2 friends in white robes holding cucumber water at a spa. The caption read, "Self-Care Day" was exactly what I needed. I stared at it until the words blurred. There had been no emergency meeting, no crisis, no impossible schedule. My anniversary had been traded for a spa day. I looked across the kitchen at the roses still wrapped in paper, their edges beginning to brown. The letter to Daniel lay beside them, unopened, unread, at his grave. Something inside me went very quiet. Not numb, not broken. Quiet in the way the sky goes still before a storm. I walked to Daniel's desk, opened the brown leather notebook, and wrote everything down. Laura emergency meeting was a spa day. David and Amanda brought kids after being told the date. Missed cemetery visit. Roses never delivered. Then under that, I wrote a sentence I had been too afraid to think until that night. They do not respect even my grief. I closed the notebook and sat in the dark kitchen, one hand resting on Daniel's letter. For the first time, I wondered whether keeping peace with my family was costing me the last pieces of myself. The accident happened on a Friday afternoon, but if I am honest, the trouble began that morning. I woke with a headache pressing behind my eyes and a strange weakness in my legs. Not enough to frighten me, but enough that I held the banister when I came downstairs. The house was chilly, the sky outside flat and white, and for once, I wanted nothing more than a quiet day. No cartoons, no school pickups, no arguments over snacks, no little shoes scattered by the door. Just silence. I made coffee and stood at the kitchen window, watching a squirrel dig near Daniel's hydrangeas. I remember thinking that maybe I would call Helen and ask if she wanted to come over for soup. Maybe I would finally reschedule the cardiology appointment I had missed. Maybe I would sit with Daniel's notebook and add up the hours I had written down, not because I wanted money, but because I wanted to understand how much of myself had vanished. Then my phone buzzed. "Laura, can you take Emma and Noah after school today? Just until 3. I have something I can't move." Before I could answer, another message came from David. "Amanda has a client thing, bringing Sophie and Caleb around noon. We'll grab them by 4. I stared at both messages. My head throbbed. 4 children. I typed, "I'm not feeling well today." I did not send it. That was the part I later struggled to forgive in myself. Not that I loved my grandchildren, not that I wanted to help, but that even after everything, even after the spa day, the jokes, the dizziness, the journal, I still believed my discomfort needed permission to matter. I sent Laura a simple, "Okay." Then, David, "Okay." By noon, Sophie and Caleb were in my living room. Sophie wanted markers. Caleb wanted toast. David stood in the doorway, already checking his watch. "You good, Mom?" It was not really a question. It was the kind of question people ask while backing away. "I suppose so," I said. "Great. Amanda will text you." He kissed Caleb's head, waved at Sophie, and left. At 2:40, Laura pulled into the driveway with Emma, Noah, and a little girl I did not recognize. I opened the front door slowly. Laura was already guiding the children up the walk. "Mom, this is Madison." Her mom got stuck at work, and I said she could stay here for a couple hours. "I hope that's okay." I looked at the little girl. She was maybe 6, with red hair in 2 braids and a unicorn backpack almost as big as she was. She smiled shyly at me. What was I supposed to say in front of a child? "Hello, Madison," I said. Laura gave me a relieved smile. "You're a saint." Her mom should be here by 3. 3. That word floated in the air like a promise no one intended to keep. 5 children came into my house that afternoon. 5. Emma, Noah, Sophie, Caleb, and Madison. My head was pounding so badly by then that bright light made me blink. But children do not understand adult headaches. They understand hunger, boredom, fairness, and who got the blue cup yesterday. Within 20 minutes, my kitchen table was covered in crayons, construction paper, apple slices, cracker crumbs, and 2 spilled cups of water. Caleb cried because Madison touched his stuffed dinosaur. Sophie complained that Emma was being bossy. Noah asked if he could go outside. Madison wanted to know where the bathroom was, then came back asking if I had a snack without peanuts because her mom said she was kind of allergic. I searched my pantry with my heart racing, suddenly terrified of feeding someone else's child the wrong thing. By 3 o'clock, no one had arrived for Madison. By 3:30, no one had arrived for anyone. I texted Laura. "Is Madison's mother coming soon?" No response. I texted David. "Do you know when Amanda is coming?" No response. The house felt too small for the noise inside it. I opened the back door and let the older children go into the yard while I stayed near the kitchen window with Caleb. I told them no climbing, no running near the steps, no throwing sticks. For 10 minutes, it was almost peaceful. Then I heard the cry. Not a normal complaint cry. Not the sharp little protest of a toy being taken. This was a frightened, wounded sound. I moved faster than I had moved in months. Outside, Noah was sitting at the edge of the patio steps, holding his knee. Emma stood beside him, pale and frozen. Madison was crying because Noah was crying. Sophie kept saying, "He tripped! He tripped, Grandma! He just tripped!" I knelt beside Noah, ignoring the burst of pain in my back. His jeans were torn at the knee. Blood streaked down his shin, bright against his skin. But the cut was not deep. He had scraped himself badly on the concrete. His palms were dirty and his lower lip trembled. "Let me see, sweetheart," I said, keeping my voice calm. "It hurts," he sobbed. I know it does. We're going to clean it." I brought him inside, washed the scrape, checked his head, checked his wrists, checked his pupils, the way I had learned when my children were small. He had not hit his head. He could bend his knee. He was scared more than injured, but that did not make the responsibility feel smaller. I called Laura. No answer. I called Brian. No answer. I called David. No answer. I called Amanda. No answer. One after another, their phones rang into silence, while Noah sat at my kitchen table with a cold washcloth on his knee and tears drying on his cheeks. I left messages. Noah fell outside. "He's okay, I think, but please call me." Nothing. I texted photos of the scrape. Nothing. For almost an hour, no parent answered. By the time Amanda arrived, the bleeding had stopped. Noah had a bandage on his knee and a popsicle in his hand. Madison had finally been picked up by a flustered mother who apologized to me twice, which nearly made me cry, because a stranger had shown more courtesy in 30 seconds than my own family had in weeks. Amanda came through the front door and froze when she saw Noah's bandage. "What happened?" Her voice was sharp enough to make Sophie shrink behind the couch. "He tripped on the patio step," I said. "I cleaned it and called everyone. He's all right." Amanda crossed the room and crouched in front of Noah, inspecting his knee like I had handed him back broken. "How could this happen under your watch?" The words struck me so hard I did not answer at first. "He was playing," I said. "Children fall sometimes." "With 5 kids here?" she snapped. "Were you even watching them?" Heat rose to my face. "I did not agree to 5 children." Laura brought Madison without asking. Amanda stood. "That is not the point." Then David arrived. He came in behind her phone in hand expression already set. Not worried, not surprised. Set. Amanda turned to him immediately. "Noah got hurt." David looked at the bandage, then at me. And then he said it. "Maybe Mom is getting too old for this." The room went silent. I felt Emma's eyes on me. Sophie's too. Even Noah stopped licking his popsicle. Too old. Not tired. Not overwhelmed. Not asked to do too much. Too old. The phrase landed in my chest with a strange, cold familiarity, as if it belonged to a conversation already held without me. "I called all of you," I said, my voice shaking. No one answered. David's jaw tightened. "That doesn't change what happened." "What happened," I said slowly, "is that I was left with 5 children, including one I did not know, while every adult responsible for them ignored my calls." Amanda folded her arms. "You're being defensive." Defensive. Another word people use when they do not want to hear the truth. Laura arrived 20 minutes later, breathless and apologetic, but only to Amanda. She hugged Noah, checked his knee, and said, "Mom, you should have kept them inside if you weren't feeling up to it." "If you weren't feeling up to it." I looked at her. "How did you know I wasn't feeling up to it?" Her face changed for the smallest second. Then David cut in. "We're just saying maybe this is too much for you now." This. Not what we ask of you. Not what we pile onto you. This. They gathered the children quickly after that, speaking in low voices near the door. I stood in the hallway, feeling both accused and dismissed. Noah hugged me before he left and whispered, "I'm sorry I fell, Grandma." That nearly broke me. "You did nothing wrong," I told him. After the cars pulled away, I found Caleb's dinosaur under the coffee table and stepped onto the porch to see if David's SUV was still outside. It was. David and Amanda stood near the passenger door, their voices low, but not low enough. Amanda said, "This proves what we've been saying." David answered, "I know. We just have to be careful how we handle it." My hand tightened around the little stuffed dinosaur. "This proves what we've been saying." I stood behind the door, heart pounding, the words moving through me like ice water. For the first time, I understood that they were not only taking advantage of me, they were building a case against me. The next morning, I woke with the words still sitting inside my chest. This proves what we've been saying. I heard them while I brushed my teeth, while I made coffee, while I opened the curtains and looked out at Daniel's hydrangeas, their white heads bowing under a light drizzle. The words followed me from room to room, colder than the weather, heavier than grief. What had they been saying? And to whom? I tried to convince myself I had misunderstood. Maybe David and Amanda had been talking about childcare being too much for me. Maybe they were worried. Maybe their tone only sounded secretive because I was hurt and tired and suspicious. But the notebook on Daniel's desk told a different story. Noah incident. David said, "Maybe I'm too old." Amanda said it proves what they've been saying. I stared at that line until my eyes burned. For months, I had doubted my own feelings. I had softened every insult excused, every late pickup swallowed every demand. But ink had a way of refusing to lie. There it was, written plainly in my own hand. The pattern was no longer just a feeling. It was evidence. Around 10 that morning, I found Emma's denim jacket hanging on the chair by the back door. She must have left it the day before in the confusion after Noah fell. A small part of me wanted to call Laura and ask her to pick it up, but a stronger part wanted a reason to look my daughter in the eye. So I folded the jacket, placed it on the passenger seat of my car, and drove to Laura's house. The Whitmans lived in a newer subdivision about 15 minutes away. All pale brick fronts, trimmed lawns and front porches no one seemed to sit on. Laura's house looked perfect from the curb. White shutters, seasonal wreath. 2 pumpkins still on the steps, though Thanksgiving had passed. A welcome mat that said, "Bless this mess." Although I had rarely seen any mess, Laura did not expect someone else to clean. Her car was not in the driveway, but Emma's little face appeared at the front window before I could turn around. "Grandma!" she called through the glass. A moment later, the door opened. "Sweetheart," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. "You forgot your jacket." Emma threw her arms around me. That hug nearly made me forget everything else. Children have a way of reminding you what is pure in a family, even while the adults are making poison behind closed doors. "Mom's not here," Emma said. "She went to pick up groceries. Dad's upstairs on a call." "That's all right. I'll just leave this and go." She took the jacket, then frowned. "Actually, Mom said I should put school stuff in her office so she can check my folder. Can you put it in there? I'm not supposed to go in when she has papers everywhere. I can set it by the door." "She'll lose it," Emma said, with the certainty of a child who knew her mother's habits better than adults admitted. I hesitated. I had been in Laura's home office before. It was just off the hallway, a tidy little room with a white desk, gray bookshelves, and framed prints with words like focus and grace. There was nothing strange about stepping inside to leave a jacket. At least that was what I told myself. Just for a second, I said. Emma skipped toward the kitchen, calling that she was getting water. I walked down the hall alone. The office door was open. At first, I noticed ordinary things. A coffee mug on the desk, a stack of school forms, a laptop half closed, a basket of mail. Then my eyes landed on a manila folder near the edge of the desk. My name was written on the tab. Morgan Kelly, Options. I stopped breathing. For a long moment, I did not move. The jacket hung over my arm. Rain tapped softly against the window. Somewhere in the house, Emma opened the refrigerator and hummed to herself. Options. There are words that seem harmless until they are attached to your name. I told myself not to touch it. I told myself it was private. I told myself decent mothers did not snoop through their daughters' papers. Then I saw the corner of a printed page sticking out from beneath the folder. Assisted Living Communities near Columbus. My fingers went numb. I set Emma's jacket on the chair. Then I opened the folder. The first page was a list of facilities. Names, addresses, monthly cost notes in Laura's neat handwriting. One had a star beside it. Another had a comment, too expensive unless house sells quickly. A third said memory care available if needed later. Memory care. I pressed one hand against my mouth. I was not confused. I was not wandering streets. I was not forgetting to turn off burners or losing bills or calling people by the wrong names. I was a tired woman who had been left with too many children and too little help. But there it was, my future discussed in bullet points. The next page was worse. It was a printout estimating the value of my house. My house, The house Daniel and I had bought when Laura was 3 and David was 6. The house where we measured the children's heights on the pantry door frame. The house where Daniel had replaced every light fixture himself. The house where I still said goodnight to his photograph before turning off the lamp. Estimated sale price, $412,000. Below it, someone had written, "Convince Mom to sell before winter. Use maintenance concerns. Too much house for her." Too much house. I had lived there for 39 years. Another page listed possible repairs: roof inspection, furnace, basement, moisture, porch, steps. Some of them were real. Most were exaggerated. At the bottom, in David's blocky handwriting, was a note framed as safety issue, not money issue. My hands began to shake. I turned another page. A spreadsheet. At the top, in bold letters, child care savings estimate. There were columns for each family. Laura/Brian, David/Amanda, hours per week, estimated daycare cost, after-school care, weekend care, overnight care, sick days, summer coverage. My unpaid hours had been converted into numbers with frightening precision. At the bottom was a total that made my stomach twist. Estimated annual savings, $38,600. I thought of every box of cereal I had bought, every tank of gas, every missed appointment, every time I had told myself not to count because love did not count. They had counted. They had counted everything except the cost to me. Then I saw the page that changed fear into something sharper. Action plan. There were 4 names. David handles finances. Laura handles house prep. Amanda talks to Mom emotionally. Brian contacts realtor discreetly. I gripped the desk to steady myself. The last line on that page seemed to rise up from the paper like a hand around my throat. Use safety concerns after Noah incident. I read it once. Then again, then a third time, because my mind refused to accept what my eyes had already understood. Noah's fall, his scraped knee, my panic, my unanswered calls, David's cold sentence, Amanda's accusation. Maybe Mom is getting too old for this. It had not been concern. It had been useful. A child's small accident had become a tool in a plan to make me look incapable. I heard Emma laughing in the kitchen, and the sound pulled me back to myself. I could not fall apart there. Not in Laura's office. Not with my granddaughter a few rooms away. My first instinct was to close the folder and pretend I had never seen it. That old instinct, the one that had kept me obedient for so long, whispered, "Don't make trouble. Don't break the family. Don't overreact." But Daniel's voice rose beneath it, steady and familiar. "Don't let anyone make you small, Morgan." I took out my phone. My hands shook so badly that the first photo came out blurry. I forced myself to breathe, then photographed every page. The assisted living list, the house estimate, the repair notes, the child care spreadsheet, the action plan, the line about Noah, especially the line about Noah. When I finished, I put the pages back exactly as I found them. I closed the folder. I placed Emma's jacket on the chair as if that had been my only reason for entering. Then I walked out. Emma met me in the hallway with a glass of water in her hand. "Are you okay, Grandma? You look funny." I bent down and kissed her forehead. "I'm okay, sweetheart," I lied. "Just a little tired." She hugged me again, and I held on 1 second too long. Because she was not part of the plan. None of the children were. They were the bait, the shield, the excuse, the weapon. But they were not guilty. That knowledge saved me from hardening in the wrong direction. I drove away from Laura's house with both hands locked on the steering wheel. 3 blocks later, I had to pull over. My whole body was trembling. Rain slid down the windshield, blurring the neat houses, the clean sidewalks, the perfect little neighborhood where my daughter had sat at a desk and helped plan how to remove me from my own life. I thought free babysitting had been the insult. I thought being taken for granted was the wound. But what I found in that folder showed me the truth. They had not only used my love, they had studied it. They had measured it, priced it, and planned to use it against me until there was nothing left of Morgan Kelly but a signature on a house sale and a quiet room in a facility I had never chosen. I sat there in the rain and opened Daniel's notebook on my lap. Under the newest date, I wrote, "Found folder at Laura's. Morgan Kelly, options, assisted living, house sale, childcare savings, action plan. Noah incident used as safety concern." Then I wrote one more sentence. "This is bigger than babysitting." I did not call Laura. That may sound small, but for me, it was the first real act of self-preservation I had taken in months. The old Morgan would have confronted her immediately, voice shaking, desperate to be reassured that I had misunderstood. The old Morgan would have wanted an explanation badly enough to accept a lie. But sitting in my car that rainy morning with photographs of that folder stored on my phone, I understood something with terrifying clarity. If they had planned this in secret, then I needed help in secret too. I drove home first. Not because I felt safe there, but because I needed Daniel. His photograph sat on the small table beside my reading chair, the one taken at Emma's kindergarten graduation. He was smiling in his navy jacket, one hand resting on my shoulder, his eyes crinkled at the corners. I stood in front of it like a woman standing at the edge of a cliff. "What do I do?" I whispered. Of course, the photograph did not answer, but I remembered something he had said years earlier, after a neighbor tried to pressure me into signing a petition I did not fully understand. Morgan Daniel had told me never sign fear, never sign guilt, and never sign anything just because someone you love is holding the pen. At the time, I had laughed. That morning, the memory felt like a warning sent forward through time. I went to Daniel's old file cabinet in the den. It still smelled faintly of dust machine oil and the peppermint candies he used to hide in the top drawer. I searched through insurance papers, old tax returns, appliance warranties, and finally found what I was looking for, a folder labeled Coleman Law Office. Patricia Coleman had been Daniel's attorney for years. She had helped us update our wills after David married Amanda. She had handled paperwork when Daniel's older brother passed away. I had always liked her. She was calm, silver-haired, practical, and impossible to rush. My hands shook as I dialed the number. Coleman Law Office, a receptionist answered. "This is Morgan Kelly," I said. "I need to speak with Patricia Coleman. It's important." When Patricia came on the line, her voice softened immediately. "Morgan, it's been a long time. Are you all right?" That question nearly undid me. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I think my children are planning something behind my back." There was no dramatic gasp, no quick judgment, just a pause. Then Patricia said, "Can you come in today?" I could. For once, no child was in my living room. No one had dropped off a backpack. No one had filled my day before I could claim it. I printed the photos at a drugstore because I did not trust myself to rely only on my phone. My hands felt clumsy feeding the machine, selecting copies, watching the pages come out one by one. Assisted living, house estimate, childcare savings, action plan, use safety concerns after Noah incident. Each page felt heavier in paper form. Patricia's office was downtown in an old brick building with brass railings and polished wooden doors. Daniel had always liked that place. He said a lawyer's office should look like it had seen enough human foolishness to take nothing personally. Patricia greeted me herself. She wore a dark green blazer and small gold earrings. When she took my hands, she did not squeeze too hard or speak too gently. I appreciated that. Pity would have broken me. "Come in," she said. I sat across from her desk and laid the papers down. At first, Patricia read without speaking. Her face remained controlled, but I saw the change in her eyes. She moved through the pages slowly once, then again. When she reached the action plan, her mouth tightened. "Where did you find this?" "In Laura's home office," I said. I went to return Emma's jacket. I saw my name on the folder. "Did you take the originals, numbered only photos?" "Good." That one word frightened me more than anger would have. She leaned back. "Morgan, I need to ask you something very directly. Have you signed any legal documents recently? Power of attorney, property authorizations, financial access forms, anything like that?" "No." "Are you certain?" "I am absolutely certain." Patricia opened a drawer and pulled out a thin file. "I'm asking because my office received an inquiry 2 weeks ago from a document preparation service. They wanted confirmation of whether we still represented you and whether we had a current financial power of attorney on file." My body went cold. What does that mean? It means someone may be preparing paperwork to give another person authority over your finances? I gripped the arms of the chair. She continued carefully. "I did not release any information, but after that inquiry, I asked my assistant to flag anything connected to your name. Yesterday, we received a scanned copy of a proposed financial authorization form listing David Kelly as your agent." For a moment, the room went silent in a way that did not feel like silence. It felt like pressure. "I didn't sign anything," I whispered. Patricia slid a page across the desk. At the bottom was a signature. "Morgan Kelly." It looked close. Close enough that someone who did not know my hand might accept it. But I knew immediately it was wrong. The M was too sharp, the K too narrow. I had signed my name the same way for 50 years. That was not my hand. "No," I said. "That is not mine." Patricia nodded. "I believed you would say that." Something in me cracked then. Not loudly, not violently, but the kind of crack that changes the structure of a thing forever. "My own son," I said. "We do not know who wrote it yet," Patricia replied, "and we will be careful with accusations until we have proof." "But this is serious." I covered my mouth with my hand. For months, I had worried that I was becoming a burden, a difficult mother, an overly sensitive grandmother. And all that time, someone had been bold enough to imitate my signature. Patricia let me breathe. Then she said, "There is something else you should know." I looked up. Daniel was worried about this possibility. The words struck me like a hand on my shoulder. "What do you mean?" Patricia folded her hands on the desk. "A few years before he died, Daniel came to see me alone. He said you had the softest heart of anyone he had ever known, and that your children knew it." Tears burned my eyes. "He said that he did. He loved Laura and David, but he worried they had grown accustomed to you rescuing them. He was particularly concerned that after his death, you might give away more than you could afford to give." I stared at Daniel's name embossed on an old file tab near her hand. Patricia continued. "He updated several protections. Your house is in a trust structure that prevents any forced sale without your direct verified consent. Your children cannot sell it on your behalf with a generic power of attorney." Daniel was very specific about that. I began to cry then, quietly, helplessly. All this time, I had felt alone in a fight I did not even know I was in. But Daniel had seen the danger before I did. Daniel, who fixed porch lights and talked to tomatoes and left peppermint candies in drawers, had built a fence around me when I did not know I would need one. "There is also a small education fund for the grandchildren," Patricia said. Daniel funded it modestly but wisely. "You are the controlling trustee while you are living. Not Laura, not David. You." He stated that the money should benefit the children only under terms you consider responsible. I wiped my face. So they can't touch it. Not legally. That word legally mattered. Because I was beginning to understand that love and legality were not always standing on the same side. Patricia made a list for me. Revoke any outdated authorizations. Update my medical directive. Strengthen my financial power of attorney by naming an independent fiduciary if I wished. Notify my bank that no new access should be granted without in-person verification. Secure my house documents. Keep the notebook. Save all messages. Do not sign anything presented by family. Do not discuss the folder yet. That last instruction was the hardest. I want to ask them why I said. Patricia's eyes softened. You may never get an answer that satisfies you. I looked down at my hands. She was right. People who use you rarely explain themselves honestly. They explain just enough to make you feel guilty for noticing. Before I left, Patricia placed one more document in front of me. It's time we update everything. Not because you are weak, Morgan, because you are not. I signed the legitimate papers slowly, carefully, with my own hand. For the first time in a long while, my signature felt like mine. When I stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The sidewalk still shone wet beneath the gray sky. But in the distance, a thin strip of sunlight had opened between the clouds. I sat in my car and held the steering wheel. I was still hurt, still frightened, still a mother with a broken heart. But I was no longer confused. Daniel had left me more than memories. He had left me a way to stand. The first no did not come out strong. That is the truth. People like to imagine a breaking point as something grand and clean, a moment when a woman stands tall, lifts her chin, and speaks with a voice that does not tremble. But my breaking point came while I was sitting at the kitchen table in my robe, staring at my phone with cold coffee beside me, and Daniel's notebook open under my hand. Laura's message arrived at 7:06 on Wednesday morning. Mom, we need a huge favor this weekend. Could you keep all 4 kids Friday afternoon through Sunday night? Brian and I have work obligations, and David and Amanda need coverage too. I know it's a lot, but we're desperate. I read it once, then again, then a third time, because my mind had trouble accepting the casual cruelty of it. All 4 children, from Friday afternoon through Sunday night. Not a few hours, not one school pickup, not one sick day, an entire weekend. Meals, baths, bedtime arguments, cartoons, scraped knees, pajamas, breakfast, lunch, dinner snacks, laundry, church clothes, if they expected me to take them Sunday, and the deep, bone-tired vigilance that came with being responsible for little lives. I might have said yes before. I almost did. My thumb hovered over the keyboard out of habit. Of course, sweetheart, that was what my fingers wanted to type. The sentence had worn a groove in me. It was easier than resistance, easier than the storm that would follow. But then I looked at Daniel's notebook. The last page still held the line I had written after leaving Patricia Coleman's office. Do not sign fear. Do not sign guilt. I put the phone down. My hands were shaking. I stood and walked to the kitchen window. Outside, the hydrangeas were bending in the wind, white blooms heavy with last night's rain. Daniel had planted those bushes 22 years earlier after I saw them in a magazine and sighed over them at breakfast. He had pretended not to hear me. Then the next Saturday, I found him in the yard with a shovel, 3 plants, and dirt on his forehead. You act like you don't spoil me, I had teased. He had looked up and said, a woman should know when she's cherished. I pressed my fingers to the window frame. Cherished. When had I stopped expecting that? My phone buzzed again. This time, it was David. Mom Laura said she's asking you about the weekend. We really need you. Amanda and I are burned out. It would mean a lot. A minute later, Amanda texted, The kids will be so excited for a grandma weekend. They've missed you. Then Brian, who almost never messaged me directly unless he wanted something. Thanks for helping us out, Morgan. This weekend is important. Not one of them asked if I was well. Not one of them asked whether I had plans. Not one of them mentioned the incident with Noah, the accusation, the folder, the forged signature, or the fact that they had been quietly discussing my house and future, as if I were already too weak to choose for myself. This weekend is important. So was my heart appointment. So was my anniversary. So was my dignity. I sat back down at the table. I opened the message from Laura and typed slowly. I'm not available this weekend. I stared at the sentence. It looked too short, too rude, too dangerous. So I added, I'm sorry. Then I deleted it. I had apologized for needing rest, apologized for doctor appointments, apologized for grief, apologized for making plans, apologized for being tired after doing work no one called work. This time, I would not apologize for owning my own weekend. I sent the message. I'm not available this weekend. For almost 30 seconds, nothing happened. The silence felt huge. Then my phone rang. Laura. I let it ring until it stopped. It rang again. Then David. Then Laura. Then Amanda. My kitchen sounded like an alarm system. Finally, Laura sent a voice message. I did not want to play it, but I did. Mom, what do you mean you're not available? We already made plans around this. I told the kids they'd be with you. Please call me back. Already made plans. Around this. Around me. Around my expected obedience. David's message came next. Mom, don't do this. We need you to be reasonable. Reasonable. That word made me laugh once sharply, though nothing was funny. I thought of the cabin reservation printout I had seen in Laura's folder. 3 bedrooms, hot tub, adults only, check-in Friday, check-out Sunday. It had been tucked beneath the assisted living pages like an afterthought, but I had noticed the dates. They were not desperate. They were going on vacation. Not a work obligation, not a crisis, not burnout they could not survive without me. A weekend away, and I was supposed to surrender mine so they could enjoy theirs while calling it necessity. The phone rang again. This time I answered. Laura's voice burst through immediately. Mom, what is going on with you? I sat very still. Nothing is going on with me. You just said no. Yes. To all 4 kids, for the whole weekend. Yes. She made a sound halfway between disbelief and offense. We really need this. I understand. Then why are you being like this? Like this? As if refusal were an illness. I am not available. What are you doing? That question almost pulled me back into the old pattern. I wanted to justify myself. I wanted to invent an appointment, a commitment, something solid enough for them to respect. But Patricia's voice returned to me. You do not need to prove your right to decline. I'm not available, I repeated. David joined the call somehow. I heard his voice cut in. Mom, this is ridiculous. You're retired. What could you possibly have for an entire weekend? There it was. The contempt finally unwrapped. My breath caught, but I did not let it go as a sob. I have my life, David. A pause. Then Amanda's voice tight and offended. The children have been through enough confusion lately. They need consistency. I looked at the notebook. They have parents. Silence. Laura spoke again, softer now, which was worse. Mom, the kids will think you don't want them. My heart twisted. That was the weapon they knew would always cut deepest. They are never to be told that I said. Well, what are we supposed to say? The truth. That Grandma has plans. David scoffed. What plans? I looked around my kitchen. The morning light, the coffee cup, Daniel's photograph, the notebook, my own 2 hands, old but still mine. Plans to rest, I said. Plans to go to my rescheduled doctor's appointment. Plans to visit your father's grave. Plans to sit in my own house without being assigned anyone else's responsibilities. No one spoke. For one moment, I thought maybe they had heard me. Then Laura said, "I don't recognize you anymore." Her voice cracked just enough to make my guilt rise like floodwater. But this time, another feeling rose with it. Anger. Not wild anger. Not cruel anger. Clean anger. The kind that comes when your soul finally understands it has been standing outside in the cold for too long. Maybe I said quietly, because you haven't really looked at me in years. The call went dead silent. My hand trembled against the table, but my voice did not. I love my grandchildren. I always will. But I am not available this weekend, David said. So you're just leaving us stranded? No, I said. I am leaving you responsible. Amanda gasped, as though I had slapped her. Laura began to cry. Mom, please. That almost did it. Laura crying could still pull me back through decades. I heard her at 6 crying over a scraped elbow. At 13, crying after her first heartbreak. At 25, crying before her wedding because she missed her father already, though he was still alive and standing 10 feet away. But this was not a child needing her mother. This was a grown woman trying to make her mother smaller. I'm going to hang up now, I said. Mom, I said no. Then I ended the call. For several minutes, I sat completely still. The house was silent, except for the ticking clock above the stove. My whole body shook, as if I had survived something physical. Maybe I had. Maybe after months of swallowing words, speaking one honest sentence felt like breaking through stone. Then the messages began. Selfish, unfair, last minute, punishing the kids, not acting like yourself. I turned the phone face down. And then I cried. Not because I regretted saying no, because I finally understood how much fear had been living inside my yes. That weekend, I did not babysit. On Friday morning, I went to my cardiology appointment. My blood pressure was high, and the doctor looked concerned when I told him how tired I had been. For once, I did not say I'm fine. On Saturday, Helen came over with soup, and we sat on the porch under blankets like 2 old women in a painting. She did not celebrate my pain. She simply said, "I'm proud of you." On Sunday, I took the white roses to Daniel's grave. The grass was damp and the air smelled of earth and leaves. I stood there for a long time telling him everything. The babysitting, the folder, Patricia, the no. When I finished, I touched the top of his stone. I was scared, I whispered, but I did it. The wind moved softly through the trees. For the first time in months, I did not feel useful. I felt alive. The punishment began with silence. For 2 days after I said no, no one brought the children over. No one called to tell me about Emma's school project or Noah's loose tooth. No one asked whether Sophie had left her pink sweater at my house or whether Caleb's stuffed dinosaur had been found under the couch. At first, the quiet felt like relief. Then it began to feel like a test. I would stand at the kitchen counter, holding my coffee, listening to nothing. No cartoons from the living room. No small feet pounding down the hallway. No one calling, "Grandma, where are the crayons?" or "Grandma Noah's touching my stuff." The house was peaceful, but peace is complicated when it is wrapped in fear. By Sunday evening, I started wondering if I had gone too far. That was the old training in me. My children could lie pressure insult and plan behind my back. But the moment I defended myself, my heart began preparing a confession. Maybe I should have offered one night. Maybe I should have said yes this time and set boundaries later. Maybe the children really were hurt. I was standing by the sink looking at Daniel's hydrangeas through the dark window when my phone buzzed. A new group chat. Laura had named it Family Discussion. The first message was hers. "Mom, we need to talk about what happened this weekend." The kids were confused and hurt. This cannot become a pattern. I stared at the screen. Then David wrote, "Agreed. Mom, this proved you're not thinking clearly." My hand tightened around the phone. Amanda followed almost immediately. A loving grandmother would never make the children feel unwanted just because she's upset with the adults. Then Brian, "We also need to discuss long-term arrangements for your stability. This weekend raised concerns." Stability. There it was. Not childcare, not family, not disappointment. Stability. A clean, careful word. A word that could sound caring to anyone who did not know about the folder. My pulse began to pound in my ears. Laura wrote again. "If you can't be there for the kids, maybe it's better if they don't get too attached right now. I don't want them constantly disappointed." I sat down slowly. That message hurt more than the others. Not because it surprised me, but because it confirmed something I had feared. They were willing to use the children as a fence around my heart. "Step back into the role we gave you, or we will move the children away." For a moment, I could not breathe. My thumb opened the keyboard. I began typing. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I can help next weekend if you still need me." The words appeared on the screen like an old reflex. I looked at them. Then, I imagined Patricia Coleman sitting across from me, calm and steady. "Do not negotiate with guilt while you are frightened." I erased the message. The phone buzzed again. "David, Mom refusing to help at the last minute was irrational. We're worried." Irrational. Worried. Stability. Too old. Not thinking clearly. They were building the same frame again, one careful word at a time. Before I could decide what to do, someone knocked on my back door. Helen. She did not wait for a cheerful invitation. She stepped inside, wearing a raincoat, carrying a covered bowl, and took one look at my face. What did they do? I almost laughed, because Helen never asked if something had happened. She always assumed correctly. I handed her the phone. She read the messages without changing expression, but I saw the anger gather around her mouth. "They're threatening access to the children," she said. I sat down at the kitchen table. "They're saying I hurt them." "No," Helen said. "They're saying what hurts you." I pressed both hands over my eyes. Maybe I did confuse them. Maybe Emma thought I didn't want her. I sat down at the kitchen table. "They're saying I hurt them." "No," Helen said. "They're saying what hurts you." I pressed both hands over my eyes. Maybe I did confuse them. Maybe Emma thought I didn't want her. Helen set the bowl down harder than necessary. "Morgan, stop. Children can be disappointed without adults using that disappointment as a weapon." I looked at her through tears. She pointed toward Daniel's desk. "Get the notebook." "I don't want to." "Get it?" Her voice was not harsh, but it allowed no escape. I brought the brown leather notebook to the table. Helen opened it, turning pages carefully. She read my entries aloud, not all of them, just enough. Laura late by 1 hour, no apology. Canceled eye appointment. Caleb dropped off sick, no medicine, no warning. Missed heart appointment. Dizzy spell at stove. Noah's birthday party. Brian called me free daycare. Anniversary. Laura said emergency meeting. Facebook showed spa day. She looked up. Do you hear this, Morgan? I cried harder, because hearing the facts in someone else's voice made them impossible to soften. Helen turned another page. Found folder at Laura's, assisted living, house sale, action plan, use safety concerns after Noah incident. Her voice broke slightly on that one. Your children did not become victims because you said no for one weekend, I whispered. I still love them. Of course you do. That's why this hurts. But love does not require you to hand them the knife and then apologize for bleeding. We sat in silence for a while. The phone buzzed again. Amanda, Morgan, the children need their grandmother. Please don't let pride ruin this family. Pride. I thought of all the words they had used: selfish, bitter, difficult, irrational, unstable, proud. Words designed to make me look at myself instead of looking at what they had done. For the first time, I saw the machinery of it. They were not just angry that I had said no. They were trying to make my no look like proof that I could not be trusted. Helen pushed the notebook toward me. Answer them, but answer like a woman who has read her own life in ink. My hands still shook, but I picked up the phone. I typed slowly, thinking through every word. I love my grandchildren deeply. That has never changed. But from now on, any request for childcare must be made at least 1 week in advance. I have the right to say no. I will no longer provide overnight childcare. I will not accept sick children without prior discussion and clear information. I will not be responsible for children I did not agree to watch. And the children are not to be told that my boundaries mean I do not love them. I paused. Then I added, if anyone uses my relationship with the children to pressure, threaten, or punish me, I will consider that a serious breach of trust. I read it 3 times. It sounded unlike me. No, that was not true. It sounded like a part of me that had been waiting a long time to speak. I sent it. For nearly 5 minutes, the group chat went silent. Helen smiled faintly. Good. Then David responded. We need to meet about Mom's condition. There it was again. My condition. Not my boundary. Not my evidence. Not their behavior. My condition. I felt fear rise in me, but it no longer filled the whole room. There was something else there now. A line. Thin, maybe, but real. Helen saw my face and touched my hand. They're going to push harder, she said. I know. What are you going to do? I looked toward Daniel's photograph, then toward the notebook, then toward my phone, where my family had just shown me exactly who they became when I stopped making myself available. I'm going to stop answering fear, I said. That night I did not sleep well, but I did not send an apology. I did not soften the message. I did not offer Saturday afternoons or emergency exceptions or one more chance for them to define my love as labor. Instead, I placed my phone in the kitchen drawer, made a cup of chamomile tea, and sat in Daniel's chair with the old quilt over my knees. My children thought the battle was about babysitting, but now I knew the truth. The real battle was about whether I still belonged to myself. For the next few days, my house was quiet in a way that no longer felt peaceful. It was not the old quiet from after Daniel died. That quiet had been grief heavy and familiar. This one was sharper. This one had the shape of punishment. No backpacks by the door. No cartoons murmuring from the living room. No sticky fingerprints on the refrigerator handle. No Emma at the kitchen table asking if Grandpa Daniel liked chocolate cake. No Noah hunting for toy cars under the couch. No Sophie singing made-up songs while I washed dishes. No Caleb curling into my lap with his stuffed dinosaur tucked under his chin. I had wanted rest, but I had not wanted exile. That was the cruel part of it. My children knew the difference. They knew I could survive without being used, but they also knew how deeply I loved those grandchildren. So they withdrew the children, like closing curtains, leaving me standing outside the warm room of my own family. On the third evening, I almost texted Laura. I had my phone in my hand. I even typed Emma doing okay, then I deleted it. Not because I did not care, because I knew Laura would read concern as weakness and weakness as an open door. Instead, I opened Daniel's notebook. I read the last few pages slowly. The folder, Patricia, the forged signature, the group chat, my boundaries. The facts steadied me, but they did not comfort me. Truth can give you a backbone, but it does not always warm your heart. I made tea I did not drink. I turned on the television and did not hear a word of it. I folded the same blanket twice. Around 8:30, I turned off the living room lamp and was about to go upstairs when my tablet rang. Not my phone. My tablet. The screen lit up with Emma's name. For 1 second, I simply stared. Then I answered. Emma's face appeared too close to the camera, her eyes wet and frightened. She was in her bedroom, I could tell from the pink curtains behind her and the paper stars taped to the wall. "Grandma," she whispered. My heart nearly broke from that one word. "Hi, sweetheart." Her chin trembled. "Do you not love us anymore?" I sat down slowly in Daniel's chair. "Oh, Emma, no. No, honey, that is not true. Mom said you chose yourself over us." I closed my eyes for just a moment because anger rose so fast, I was afraid it would come out of my mouth in a way a child should never have to hear. When I opened them, I made my voice gentle. "Sweetheart, grown-up problems are never a child's fault. Do you hear me? Never." "But you said no." "Yes, I said. I said no to babysitting for a whole weekend. I did not say no to loving you." Emma wiped her nose with her sleeve. Mom was crying. Uncle David was mad. Aunt Amanda said you're acting different. I breathed slowly. Children repeat what fills the air around them. They do not know which words are safe to carry and which words are too heavy. Sometimes adults say things when they are upset, I said. But you do not have to carry those feelings for them. Emma looked down. I heard them talking. Every part of me went still. "You don't have to tell me anything that makes you uncomfortable," I said carefully. She shook her head, and fresh tears slipped down her cheeks. I was in the hallway. They thought I was asleep. I gripped the arm of Daniel's chair. "What did you hear, honey?" she whispered. "Mom said you ruined the plan." The room seemed to tilt, but I kept my face calm. "What plan?" "I don't know. They were all talking. Mom and Dad were on speaker with Uncle David and Aunt Amanda. Uncle David said now they couldn't count the house money yet." My fingers went cold. "House money," Emma continued, her voice small and confused. "Dad said the realtor thing had to wait because you were being watched now." "I don't know what that means." "I did. God help me, I did." Then Aunt Amanda said, "Maybe she pushed too hard," Emma said. "And Mom said the lawyer thing might get complicated." The lawyer thing. I felt Daniel's presence then, not like a ghost, but like memory standing behind me, with one steady hand on my show. Behind me with one steady hand on my shoulder. Emma's lip trembled. "Grandma, are they mad because of me?" "Because I told you about the beach trip." "No," I said immediately. "No, sweetheart, this is not because of you. But mom-side kids should not repeat everything. Older." Emma's lip trembled. "Grandma, are they mad because of me? Because I told you about the beach trip? No, I said immediately. No, sweetheart. This is not because of you. But Mom said kids should not repeat everything. That is true, I said softly. But adults should not put children near secrets that can hurt them. Emma stared at me, trying to understand. I leaned closer to the screen. Listen to me. You are a child. You are not responsible for your parents' choices. You are not responsible for my feelings. You are not responsible for fixing this family. She cried harder then. I miss you. That broke the part of me I had been holding together. I miss you too, I whispered. Can I still come to your house? Yes, sweetheart. I want to see you. I want to see Noah and Sophie and Caleb too. But the adults have to learn a better way. A respectful way. What if they say, no? I swallowed. There are questions children ask that expose the ugliness adults try to hide. Then I will keep loving you from wherever I am, I said, and I will keep trying to make things right without asking you to be in the middle. Emma nodded, though she still looked scared. Grandma, yes. Are you going to move away? My throat tightened. No, I am not planning to move away. Mom said maybe your house is too much. There it was again. My daughter's words placed carefully inside a child's heart. My house is my home, I said, and I am safe here. Emma looked relieved, but only a little. Then she glanced toward her bedroom door. I have to go. Mom thinks I'm doing homework. Emma. She looked back. You never have to earn my love by carrying adult secrets. Promise me you'll remember that. I promise. And if anyone asks why you called me, you can say you missed your grandma. That is the truth. She nodded. I love you, she whispered. I love you more than pancakes on Saturday morning. That made her smile through the tears. It was an old joke between us. Then the call ended. For a long moment, I sat staring at my reflection in the dark tablet screen. My granddaughter had not meant to become a witness. She had only wanted reassurance that her grandmother still loved her. But in reaching for comfort, she had confirmed what the folder had already shown me. They were still talking about the house. They were still talking about a realtor. They were still talking about lawyers, and they were doing it where children could hear. My sadness changed shape that night. It became something firmer. Until then, part of me had still hoped this could be handled gently. Quiet boundaries, careful conversations, time for everyone to calm down. But Emma's tears showed me the cost of silence. If I stayed quiet, the children would be taught that love meant pressure, that family meant guilt, that a grandmother's worth could be measured in unpaid labor and property value, that adults could twist truth and call it concern. I could not let that be their inheritance. I opened Daniel's notebook and wrote down everything Emma had said as close to her words as I could remember. Ruined the plan. House money. Realtor thing. Lawyer thing might get complicated. Amanda pushed too hard. Then I photographed the page and sent it to Patricia Coleman with a short message. Emma called tonight. She overheard more. I think we need to move forward. Patricia did not answer right away. It was late, but I did not need an immediate reply. I already knew what had to happen. For the first time since finding the folder, I was not only protecting myself. I was protecting the children from learning that love and manipulation were the same thing. And that gave me a courage I had never found when I was only fighting for Morgan Kelly. Patricia Coleman chose a Thursday morning for the meeting. Neutral ground, she said over the phone. And witnesses. That word made my stomach tighten. Witnesses. It sounded so serious, so legal, so far away from the family I once believed we were. Families were supposed to gather around kitchen tables, not conference tables. Mothers were supposed to hear apologies in living rooms, not sit beside attorneys while their children arrived with guarded faces and folded arms. But the kitchen table had been where I gave too much. The conference table would be where I took myself back. I wore a navy dress Daniel had loved and a gray cardigan because my hands were cold even before I left the house. Before driving downtown, I stood in front of Daniel's photograph. "I wish you were coming with me," I whispered. Then I touched my wedding ring and corrected myself. "Maybe you are." Patricia's office smelled like polished wood and lemon oil. She had placed a folder in front of my chair, along with a glass of water I knew I would barely touch. Inside were printed copies of everything: my babysitting journal entries, the photos from Laura's office, the forged signature form, the text messages, and the notes from Emma's call. "Remember," Patricia told me quietly, "you do not have to prove you are a good mother. We are here to establish facts." I nodded, though my throat felt tight. Laura arrived first. She looked smaller than usual, pale and tense, her purse clutched in both hands. Brian came behind her, expression blank, jaw set. David arrived next, walking fast, as if speed could make him seem in control. Amanda followed, in a cream coat and sunglasses she did not remove until Patricia asked her to. No one hugged me. No one asked how I was. David looked at Patricia and said, "I don't understand why we need a lawyer for a family conversation." Patricia gestured toward the chairs. "Please sit." They sat across from me, 4 adults who had once sat at my dinner table asking for seconds, now looking at me like I was the problem they had come to solve. David started before Patricia could. "Mom, we're all concerned. Lately, you've been emotional, secretive, and frankly, irrational. Refusing to help with the kids out of nowhere, sending aggressive messages, creating confusion for everyone." Patricia interrupted calmly. "You'll have time to speak, but today's meeting was requested by Mrs. Kelly." Mrs. Kelly. Not Mom, not Grandma, not free daycare. Mrs. Kelly. The name steadied me. Laura's eyes flicked toward me. "Mom, is this really necessary?" I looked at her for a long second. My daughter, my little girl. The baby I had carried through fevers and nightmares, the teenager I had waited up for, the woman whose children I had loved like breath. "Yes," I said, "it is." Patricia opened the first folder. "Well, begin with child care." Amanda made a faint scoffing sound. "Child care. This is about Morgan's health and judgment." "No," I said, surprising myself with how clear my voice sounded. "This began with child care. It became about my health because all of you decided my exhaustion was useful to your story." Patricia laid copies of my journal entries on the table. "These are Mrs. Kelly's records of child care provided over several months," she said. "Drop-off times, pick-up times, sick children unpaid expenses, canceled medical appointments, and incidents where additional children were left without prior agreement." Brian shifted in his chair. David glanced at the pages, then looked away. "Mom wrote all that down." "I did," I said, "because I needed to see the truth in writing." Laura's face reddened. "We never forced you." I turned to her. "No, you just made saying no feel like betrayal." No one answered that. Patricia placed the next document on the table, a copy of the child care savings spreadsheet. Amanda's face changed immediately. Laura's eyes filled with panic. David leaned forward. "Where did you get that?" "In your sister's office," I said. "In a folder with my name on it." Laura whispered, "You went through my private papers." I felt the old guilt rise, but it did not rule me. "You planned my future in secret," I said. "And you want to talk to me about privacy?" Silence spread across the table. Patricia continued. The folder also included an estimated home value assisted living facilities notes about convincing Mrs. Kelly to sell before winter, and an action plan assigning roles to each of you. She placed the documents down one at a time. Home value, assisted living, David handles finances. Laura handles house prep. Amanda talks to mom emotionally. Brian contacts realtor discreetly. Brian's face went gray. Amanda folded her arms. This is being taken completely out of context. Then explain the context, I said. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Patricia placed the final page in front of them. Use safety concerns after Noah incident. Laura covered her mouth. David looked at Amanda. Amanda looked at Brian. That small chain of glances told me more than any confession could have. I said quietly, Noah fell. He scraped his knee. I called all of you for almost an hour and no one answered. Then you used that child's fear to suggest I was too old to live my own life. David's voice hardened. We were worried about safety. You were worried about control, I said. His face flushed. That is unfair. What was fair about forging my signature? The room went still. Patricia took out the scanned financial authorization form and laid it in front of them. This document was submitted for review listing David Kelly as financial agent for Mrs. Kelly, she said. Mrs. Kelly states C. Lurley that the signature is not hers. This document was submitted for review listing David Kelly as financial agent for Mrs. Kelly, she said. Mrs. Kelly states clearly that the signature is not hers. Laura turned toward David. David's jaw worked. I didn't forge anything, Amanda said quickly. It was just a draft. Patricia's eyes moved to her. A draft does not require a simulated signature. Brian muttered. This is getting out of hand? No, I said. It got out of hand when my children decided my house, my savings, my labor, and my future were family resources. Laura began to cry then, but this time I did not rush to comfort her. I had spent my whole life moving toward my children's tears. That morning, I stayed seated. Patricia spoke again. Mrs. Kelly has updated her legal documents. None of her children have authority over her finances, medical decisions, home, or trust. Her house cannot be sold without her direct, verified consent. The grandchildren's education fund is now protected with independent oversight. Any further attempt to misrepresent Mrs. Kelly's wishes may be treated as a legal matter. Amanda's voice was sharp. So you're threatening us now? No, I said. I'm protecting myself. David leaned back, wounded pride all over his face. After everything we've done, this is what you think of us. I looked at him sadly. After everything you planned, what did you expect me to think? Laura wiped her face. We wanted what was best. I asked the question that had been living in me since I found the folder. Best for me or easiest for you? No one answered. That silence was the closest thing to truth I received. I took a breath. I love my grandchildren. I will always love them. But I will not be free daycare. I will not accept last-minute assignments. I will not take last-minute assignments. I will not take sick children without warning. I will not provide overnights. I will not be threatened with losing access to the children when I say no. And I will not sell my home. Sick children without warning. I will not provide overnights. I will not be threatened with losing access to the children when I say no. And I will not sell my home. Laura whispered, Mom. I held up one hand gently but firmly. No. You listened to yourselves long enough. Now you will listen to me. For once, they did. I am not confused. I am not unstable. I am not too old to know when I am being used. I am a mother, a grandmother, a widow, and a woman with a life of my own. Your father loved me enough to protect me. Now, I am going to love myself enough to honor that protection. My voice trembled at the end, but it did not break. When the meeting ended, they left separately. David stormed out. Amanda followed with her chin high. Brian avoided my eyes. Laura lingered by the door, tears shining on her face, but she still did not apologize. Not then. Patricia walked me to the elevator. "You did very well," she said. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. "I don't feel well." Courage rarely feels good while it's happening. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside alone, but for the first time in a long time, I did not feel small. Healing did not come quickly. I wish I could say my children walked out of Patricia Coleman's office changed people. I wish I could say David called me that night with a shaking voice and said, "Mom, I'm sorry. I lost sight of you." I wish I could say Amanda admitted she had manipulated me. Brian confessed he had treated me like an employee, and Laura came to my door with flowers and tears. That is not how real families heal. Real healing is slower, messier. Sometimes it begins with silence. For weeks after the meeting, David barely spoke to me. When he did, his messages were short and stiff, as if each word cost him pride. "Can Sophie call you tonight?" "Caleb left Dinosaur there. Pick up at 4, okay?" Amanda did not apologize at all. She sent cold, practical messages about the children always polite enough to look innocent, but never warm enough to feel kind. Brian disappeared behind Laura, as he often did, though I suspected fear had more to do with it than shame. Patricia's mention of the forged signature had changed something in him. He had looked like a man who suddenly understood paper could become evidence. Laura was different. Not better at first, just different. For a while, she seemed to hover at the edge of apology without stepping into it. She sent pictures of Emma's school project, a video of Noah riding his scooter, a message saying, "The kids miss you." I answered carefully, "I miss them too, but I did not offer to babysit." That was the hardest part. Every time a photo arrived, the old ache opened in me. I wanted to say, "Bring them over." I wanted to bake cookies and make pancakes and fill the house with noise again. But I knew if I rushed back into usefulness before respect had been rebuilt, nothing would change. Love without boundaries had nearly cost me myself. I would not go back. My life returned to me in small pieces. First, I rescheduled my cardiology appointment and kept it. Then I went to the eye doctor. I got my hair trimmed for the first time in months. I met Helen for lunch at a little cafe near the library, and when my phone buzzed during the meal, I did not pick it up immediately. Helen watched me over her soup. "Look at you," she said. "What, letting a phone ring like a free woman?" I laughed so hard people at the next table looked over. I went back to book club. The first meeting felt strange, like stepping into a room where everyone else had continued living, while I had been trapped in a story I was ashamed to tell. But the women welcomed me warmly. No one asked why I had missed so many months. They simply made space for me. One Sunday afternoon, I drove to Daniel's grave with fresh white flowers. I stayed longer than usual. "I'm trying," I told him. "I'm trying to be cherished even without you here to remind me." The wind moved through the cemetery trees, and for once, I did not cry the whole way home. Then one Thursday afternoon, Laura came to my house. Alone. No children, no backpacks, no last-minute request waiting behind her smile. She stood on the porch with both hands wrapped around a paper coffee cup, looking younger than 39 and older than I remembered. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. She followed me to the kitchen, the same kitchen where she had eaten cereal in pajamas, cried over homework, celebrated birthdays, asked me for advice, and later slowly learned to take my yes for granted. We sat across from each other. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then Laura began to cry. Not the performance crying from the phone call, not the kind that demanded rescue. This was quieter, smaller, ashamed. I got used to it, she said. I waited. I got used to you always being there. I told myself it was because you loved the kids, because you were lonely, because we needed help. And maybe some of that was true, but... She wiped her face. I stopped seeing the difference between help and entitlement. My hands were folded tightly in my lap. She looked at me. When Dad died, I think part of me assumed you would just become, I don't know, the sinner we all used when we needed something. I didn't think about what you needed. I didn't want to think about it because then I'd have to feel guilty. The honesty hurt, but it was cleaner than denial. What about the folder, I asked. Laura closed her eyes. I was scared about money, she whispered. Brian and I were arguing. David kept saying the house was too much for you. Amanda kept saying you would be safer somewhere with support. At first it sounded like planning. Then it became, I was scared about money, she whispered. Brian and I were arguing. David kept saying the house was too much for you. Amanda kept saying you would be safer somewhere with support. At first it sounded like planning. Then it became... She swallowed. It became ugly. You let it become ugly. I know, and you used the children. She began crying harder. I know, I did not comfort her. That was new for me. I loved my daughter. I always would. But love did not mean rushing to erase the consequences of her choices. I am not ready to pretend this is fine, I said. She nodded quickly. I'm not asking you to. Forgiveness is not the same as access. I know, and forgiveness, if it comes, will require change. Laura looked at me, then really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. What do you need? She asked. The question was so simple, it nearly broke me. I took a breath. I need my home to be respected as mine. I need my time to be respected as mine. I need visits with the children arranged clearly, not dumped on me. No overnights, no last-minute requests unless it is a true emergency. No sick children without warning. No telling the children I do not love them because I have boundaries. And no financial discussions about me behind my back. Ever. Laura nodded through tears. And David? She asked. David will have to do his own work. He's still angry, I know. Are you angry? Yes, I said. But I'm also tired of anger being the only proof that I matter. Laura reached across the table, then stopped before touching my hand. For once, she waited for permission. I gave it. Her fingers closed around mine. I'm sorry, Mom. It was not enough to fix everything. But it was the first apology that sounded like it was for me, not for what she had lost. Life changed after that. Not perfectly. Amanda remained cool. David stayed distant for a long time. Brian apologized once in a stiff, uncomfortable way, and I accepted it without pretending it repaired everything. But the rules held. The grandchildren visited on Saturdays twice a month from 10 to 4. Their parents packed lunches. They picked them up on time. If someone was sick, they stayed home. If a schedule changed, I had the right to say no. And slowly, the house became joyful again without becoming a workplace. Emma helped me plant white flowers along the porch. Noah made me a card that said, Grandma's house is happy. Sophie performed songs in the living room, and Caleb still brought his dinosaur, though now he carried his own little backpack. One afternoon, Emma hugged me in the kitchen and said, I'm glad you're happy again, Grandma. I held her close. Me too, sweetheart. That evening, after they left, I sat on the porch as the sun lowered behind the trees. Children's laughter still seemed to echo in the yard, but it no longer sounded like duty. It sounded like love returning in a healthier form. I touched Daniel's wedding ring on my finger. For so long, I thought keeping my family meant giving until there was nothing left of me. But I learned something at 68 that I wish I had known sooner. You do not have to disappear to prove you love someone. And saying no to being used is not the same as saying no to family. Sometimes, it is the only way love has a chance to become honest again. I did not lose my family. I lost the role of victim. And for the first time in years, I belonged to my own life.